It is 9 o'clock, which means it is time for another edition of Sports Talk Live. I am your host, Nick Burt. Not a ton going on today. US Open's on right now. Currently in front of me, I have CFL football on right now. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are playing. As you can see the patch, I am an owner. You know, they just don't hand those patches out. But there is some news going on. You know, we're headed into not a long weekend, I guess. Still only 2 days. But it is a weekend with sporting events on. So there's a lot to catch up on here because feel like there's a lot of news everywhere. So let's just get into it. So NBA news, Ja Morant has been suspended the first 25 games without pay. So my guess would be that's probably until Christmas. I'm kind of surprised that it's 25 games. He was suspended for what they said was a toy gun on a video. It was his second offense. So I figured that it would at least be half a season. Adam Silver did not do that. He went 25 games, which, like I said, probably ends up being Christmas, which would make sense because that's when people start caring about the NBA. So, like I said, I'm surprised by that because I figured it was going to be much longer. It ends up not being as long. And yeah, it will be interesting to see because the Grizzlies are a much different team without him playing than they are with him. He's usually not outstanding, or they're not outstanding without him, but they're also not bottom of the league without him. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know if there's appeals here. I don't think there are, so I think it is just set that it will be a 25 game suspension without pay, like I said, so that is going to be probably important. Like I said, won't be really surprised by anything that happens after that, basically. Other news coming out of the NBA, the Warriors promoted Mike Dunleavy Jr. to general manager. So that's probably not going to change a ton in the front office wise, given that it's just a promotion from inside. So I don't really expect a ton of changes coming with the Warriors coming this season. They'll still probably be the team that they basically have been. Dunleavy obviously replacing Bob Meyer, who stepped down I don't know, it might have been a month ago, might have been less, I don't really remember, but he was basically the architect of this whole team. He's been there for 10, 15 years maybe. Steps down. It's now Dunleavy's job. We'll see if he does make any big, acquisitions or trades. I'm not expecting it. But, I mean, who knows? Anything can really happen now, I feel, in the NBA. It seems like a lot of more players are open to moving. So maybe this ends up being a changing of the guard in Golden State where, it's starting to look like it's the end of their window and maybe they, speed up that window closing and start moving on and getting big assets back, which I don't expect. Or maybe, they make big acquisitions to keep that window open. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And then finally, with NBA news, Michael Jordan is selling his majority ownership of the Charlotte Hornets. End of an era in Charlotte. He bought his stake in the team, I believe, it was 2011. They obviously have never been outstanding. I don't think they've finished higher than 6th in his time of owning the team. So I don't know if it was really him making them be that bad, which I don't think it was, because it kind of he at some points, yes, he was very hands-on and it went absolutely terribly. But then I feel like there were also times when he was hands off with the team and it still wasn't great. So I guess we'll see what this new ownership does. It's the Charlotte Hornets, so you're not really expecting, I'd say, anything great out of them, just because they've never been that consistent. So Jordan bought minority stake in the team in 2010. It was for around $275 million. I believe he sold it today for like 1.6 billion or something like that. It's probably a number around there. I don't think it was mentioned, but it's a number in the billions. So Jordan is going to make a lot of money on this. It's a great investment. Obviously, that's a huge difference from when he bought it. So, I mean, yeah, Jordan is now out of NBA ownership. So that seemed pretty newsworthy because one of, if not the greatest players of all time, goes into ownership and now is getting out of it. So I'm not reading too much into that. It's just the Hornets were never good. So they just can't. The Hornets just, they're not good. And maybe this is the change that gets them over that hump of being good again. I don't know. We'll see. Anything I feel like can happen with this team. I feel like Charlotte is getting to that point where it could be a destination city if things go right. It's not there right now, and they got to figure out a way to get it there. So given that, we'll move on to some NHL news. The Canucks buy out Oliver Ekman-Larsson's contract. Kind of surprised by this. I didn't really, I saw it coming, but I didn't see it coming because this is now on record the largest buyout in NHL history, I believe, is the official wording of it. The Canucks still have to pay him almost, I believe it's $19.95 million. So just under 20. It is, so the buyout is $19.33 million, and it's the largest ordinary course buyout in the NHL cap era. The four larger buyouts, which was Brad Richards, Mike DiPietro, Ilya Bryzgalov, and Vincent Lecavalier, they were all compliance buyouts, so they never hit the salary cap. So the Ekman-Larsson contract that is going to be on the Canucks salary cap, I believe for another 5 or 6 years, it's on there. So large buyout the cap is expected to go up at some point soon. It's not going to be this year. It's probably going to be next year is the first time we're going to have a huge jump in it. So it's probably only going up $1 million this year. So that might cause problems this year for the Canucks, but I feel like past this year, it won't really be a problem. Other news, it sounds like the Leafs are getting closer to a long-term extension with Austin Matthews. It seems like they want it to be one of, if not the highest contracts in the NHL, which I'm not surprised, but also I don't think he's done enough to prove that he's worth it. He's definitely worth a big contract. I don't know if he's worth the highest paid player in hockey. Now, another point with this is if it does end up being a long-term contract, 6-7 years, I don't know why Matthews would do that. Because like I just said, the cap isn't really going up this year. It's going to be next year and the years after that it starts to skyrocket. If you're Austin Matthews, you have to, I would think, you take a 2 or 3 year contract now, and then wait for that cap to go up, which would probably be at the end of that, 2 to 3 year contract extension, and then just make an absolute large bag of money compared to what he would be getting now. So I don't know. That would be the way I'd go if I was Matthews. It might not be what the Leafs want to do because it would kind of seem non-committal-ish, I guess I would say, from his side, because it's not a long-term extension. But obviously the Leafs want to be doing the exact opposite. They would want a long-term extension so they don't have to pay that huge contract in 2 to 3 years, even though the cap would be going up. There's always chances to, redo the contracts and give them more money, but I don't know. That's the most important contract I think that's going to happen this offseason if it happens, because this free agency class is not good, and I think there's going to be a lot more moves trade-wise and like contracts like the Austin Matthews contract than just free agent contracts, because there aren't a ton of good players on the market this year. So a lot of teams that are going to be somewhat desperate are probably going to make trades rather than, obviously signing. So one of them is the Florida Panthers, who obviously are just coming off a Stanley Cup final run, which they lost in the final to the Golden Knights. Their name has come up today as possible landing spots for Sharks defenseman Erik Karlsson. Karlsson signed a 8-year contract. I want to say it was 4 years ago, so it's about halfway done. And the Sharks are just in a spot right now where it's full rebuild, and Erik Karlsson does not fit that. He does not fit a rebuild. He just had almost a career year, I believe. It was up there. It was his highest points total season in a while. So kind of cashing in while he's hot, basically. The big question for me was, what do the Panthers give back in this potential trade, given that Karlsson's contract is quite large? And the only thing I can figure out is that it would be Sergei Bobrovsky. The trade somewhat makes sense. You have 3 goalies right now in Florida with Bobrovsky, Lyon, and Nunt, who is still out, I believe. But I would assume he's going to be back by next year. So you could be going into next year with 3 potential starters. Bobrovsky's contract is the most similar to Karlsson's on the Panthers right now. That could be movable. Now, the problem is Bobrovsky has a full no-trade clause, so that could become a problem. But we'll see. Like I said, that was just a name thrown out there that it's a potential landing spot. There's no concrete stuff done right now. You're not going to see anything like that until the draft time, probably. Speaking of the draft, another possible player on the move during the draft is Alex DeBrincat with the Senators. He's going to be an RFA this summer. There doesn't seem to be real movement for a new contract in Ottawa. So he might be on the move again. He just came to Ottawa last year during the draft and from Chicago. So it seems like he might be on the move again. It will be interesting to see what happens with that. And finally, the Devils are nearing a long-term deal with Timo Meier. They already signed Jesper Bratt to a contract extension. They technically did the extension of Damon Severson, who then got traded to the Blue Jackets. So it's looking like a Timo Meier deal will be done soon. So it will be interesting to see what happens with that. So given that's going to be it for the NHL news and notes. And we are going to go around the pitch. There's a lot happening there. So yeah, let's get into it. We'll first start with the Nations League semifinals that happened last night. And now we are at the finals / third place game. Canada defeats Panama 2-0 in the first game last night. Canada just they kind of dominated from start to finish as, oh my, it is 3rd and 1 for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They bring in Shea Patterson for a QB sneak, and he loses, I think, 2 yards. Wow. Yeah, he didn't get that. Wow. Yep. Okay. Back to soccer. Wait a minute. He might have got it. No, I don't think he did. I'll come back. He's coming off the field. He didn't get it. I'm stunned. Because Shea Patterson never knows what he's doing. Okay. Canada dominated kind of start to finish. I never really felt that Panama was hugely in the game. They just weren't. It seemed like it was going to be Canada start to finish, and that's what it ended up being. And, I couldn't really expect less. Panama was always probably the worst of the 4 that were going to Vegas for this Nations League final. But after watching last night, there may be a new number 4, and that is Mexico, as they lose 3-0 to the United States of America. The U.S. team dominated basically from start to finish, just like Canada did, except they put more pressure on, and then in the end it just fell apart, and there really was no pressure. But 2 just great goals by Christian Pulisic, a third by Ricardo Pepi, who came off the bench. And then the game descended into chaos. We had 4 red cards, 2 for each side. I think we had at least 12 yellows. We had stoppages because of homophobic chants by the Mexican fans, which just seems to happen all the time now. But, that's their own problem. I don't know why they keep doing it, but CONCACAF needs to probably punish them more. I don't know. There were fights, there were jerseys torn. It turned into a mess. It was one of the worst ref games I've seen in a long time. That dude has no business reffing a game like that. He was at the World Cup, I believe, last year, and it's like a CONCACAF representative of refs, because each federation sends like their best refs, I think. He was somehow sent there, and he was absolutely awful last night. He lost control of the game and didn't seem to care. And I don't know. So going into that, we have Panama and Mexico playing in the 3rd place game on Sunday. Again, these games are going to be in Vegas. And we have USA Canada for the Nations League title on Sunday night at 8:30. Should be an interesting matchup in that Canada-US game. It really seems like Canada is the measuring stick, I'd say, for the U.S. right now in CONCACAF, and obviously vice versa. For most teams, the USA is the measuring stick in CONCACAF, but the U.S. needs somebody to measure up to, and I believe that's Canada. Canada's going to give them problems, I believe, on Sunday. We saw it happen in qualifiers for the World Cup. That was the last time they played. A lot of the same players still around for both teams from that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this final plays out. Same with the 3rd place game. I'd expect Mexico to win that game. But after last night, I don't know if they will. It seems like, especially with reports now coming out, that players might just be quitting the national team because of problems with their manager, Diego Cocoa, which you want to talk about a footballing nation that actually cares about their team. Cocoa lost his first game as manager last night. He had 6 previous games and they didn't lose. There's already talks about him getting sacked, which, again, it's something that's probably going to end up happening because the same things happened with Tata Martino, the previous coach of the Mexican team, and they waited a long time to fire him, and it didn't turn out well for Mexico at all. So now Cocoa is in a similar situation, and it's looking like he might be sacked after Sunday. Now, if we want to talk about nations that just don't care about their football teams at all and just say, you know what, let's keep running it back. Let's keep running it back. Greg Berhalter has been rehired as the U.S. men's national team manager. He is rehired after his contract expired at the end of the World Cup in 2022. A lot of things came out after that, especially with the Reyna family leaking information out about him, kicking his then girlfriend, now wife, back in college, which was in the 90s. It was as retribution because the Reyna's son, Gio, played 54 total minutes in the World Cup. That they had a great relationship, the two families, and now that's completely gone, basically. And now he's back somehow. They said that they did an extensive search, and they want a worldwide search. I don't know how they got to this point. I gotta be honest with you. This has been one of the most confusing hires I think I've seen in a long time. And to top all this, the news about this breaks probably, what was it? I think it was 2 minutes into the U.S.-Mexico game, which I believe was strategic. I believe a lot of this was strategic the past week. Coming into this week, you have the players saying, because we're back into camp, so the media's out there asking questions. They're asking about, who the next manager should be. They ask, should Berhalter be back? And guess what? You can't just say no. You can't be like, no, he kind of sucked. We don't want him back. It makes it all look positive. Like, yeah, we're really excited that he could come back. He's been a great manager, blah, 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 blah. Then on, I believe it was Sunday, he was rumored for the Sparta Rotterdam job in the Netherlands. Then it was Tuesday, he was rumored to the Club America job in Mexico. Then it was Wednesday night. It turns out that he's no longer interested in that Club America job because he still believes that he can become U.S. manager. And then last night around 8:30, Jesse Marsh's agent, who was believed to be one of the top managers that the U.S. was potentially hiring, that he is not going to be the manager. And then it was no more than 2 hours later that Greg Berhalter is coming back. Like I said, I believe this was all tactical. I believe Berhalter was rumored to those two jobs so that the U.S. could say, hey, he was in demand. We got to rehire him. What are we going to do? We got to rehire him because he's so in demand. And, look what happened. This, like I said, one of the most shocking hires I've seen in a long time. Because now you're asking the questions you shouldn't have to be asking. You're asking, are we going to see Ricardo Pepi back in a Berhalter squad when he's managing? Because that relationship seemed to be broken when he got left off the team for the World Cup. Are we going to see Gio Reyna back in a Greg Berhalter, team? We should not be, Zach Steffen, are we going to see him? Zach Steffen, that's a whole different story because I believe he's just lost that job because Matt Turner looks to be the clear number one now. I don't know what Steffen would have to do to take that number one spot, but it would probably have to be a lot. But when you bring in a manager, you shouldn't have to be asking, are certain players going to get back in the squad because the manager has problems with them? And Berhalter was asked about this in the press conference today. Has he talked to these players? He said no, he hasn't. So you're bringing in a manager that hasn't talked to players that he has a problem with, even though he's had 6 months. And I don't know what they're doing. The U.S. Soccer Federation is one of the most incompetent organizations in world football right now. It always has been. It always will be. I saw a tweet yesterday after this news broke, and it's going to stay true for as long as forever until things actually change, that the U.S. men's national team will never be a serious footballing organization as long as who you know matters more than what you know. And that is the perfect definition of what is happening at U.S. Soccer right now. It's just so unbelievable what they are doing. Oh, look at that. Shea Patterson back in on a 3rd and 1. Why? At least he got it this time, but why does he keep coming in on 3rd and 1s? What are we doing here? U.S. Soccer, very incompetent. It's always going to be about who you know, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The place has to be gutted from top to bottom for anything to even look similar to change. You can say, well, they hired Matt Crocker to be sporting director, and he's from England. You know what? Cool. But he still got hired by all these people who are going to be in his ear and say, hey, you know what? I think we should rehire Berhalter. And, he can say all he wants. He was the most outstanding person I interviewed in this, hiring process. That's not how it works. It just isn't. You cannot convince me that of the people you interviewed, which from what it sounds like, it was Jesse Marsh, Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, Berhalter, and somebody else that remained unnamed. I don't know. I really don't know what this organization is doing. That's a touchdown for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It is 7-3. We only have 3:43 left in the first quarter. Exciting times in Regina, Saskatchewan. U.S. Soccer. You reach breaking points with teams, and surprisingly, that hasn't happened with Tottenham yet for me. Last night was it for U.S. Soccer. I've given them so many chances. And last night should have been a celebratory moment for U.S. Soccer. Beating their biggest rival 3-0 in just an absolute throttling. You controlled the game start to finish. But it was overshadowed by what happened because they decided to leak that Berhalter was going to be named manager, which again, I believe is all strategic because the discourse on the internet would be, it was a lot today, I'll be honest. It was a lot. It was fun scrolling through U.S. Soccer Twitter for a little while. if that news about Berhalter gets leaked on a random Tuesday night when there's nothing going on, that breaks U.S. soccer Twitter. It just completely explodes it. You're in an all-out civil war at that point on U.S. soccer Twitter. Having it happen during a U.S. game against their biggest rival dulls that down, because people are going to be like, oh, okay, that's cool. The game's on right now. What did you say? Okay, we figured it out. Whatever. We'll figure it out tomorrow. We got a game to win today. That's what U.S. Soccer wanted here. They knew this wasn't going to be the popular hire. And guess what they did? They hired him anyways. He's got outcoached so much in games that aren't against CONCACAF nations. You can talk all you want about his, his record as manager. Like he's, let me find the official numbers here, because whatever. Berhalter is 37, 11, and 12 overall as a manager, which sounds great. Sounds like he's an outstanding manager. That puts him at like a 742 win percentage. Something like that. I don't know. He's 6-4-7 outside of CONCACAF opponents. 6-4-7. Out of those 37, 11, and 12. That means, I'm not good at math, but at least 70% of his games are against CONCACAF opponents. That should not count at all. CONCACAF is a terrible federation to compare yourself to others. There are three and a half good teams, and one of them is yourself. The rest of them, you're playing islands in the Caribbean and maybe one or two Central American countries. I don't know. Just comparing, we'll compare to a few other managers. Jurgen Klinsmann, he was obviously the manager from 2011 to 2016 or 17, one of the two. He was 55, 27, and 16. 21, 17, and 6 outside of CONCACAF. Bob Bradley, manager from 07 to 2011, I believe. 43, 25, and 12 overall. 14, 18, and 7 outside of CONCACAF. Berhalter has not tested this team enough because he knows he gets exposed when he goes outside of CONCACAF. Let's pull up some of these results if we can, if I can find them. I don't know if I can. But let's look at it. I don't know. They scored, a total of 3 goals in the World Cup in 4 games? I don't know. U.S. Soccer's lost me. I'm done. Like I said, last night should have been a celebratory moment. Last night was the best they've looked in a long time, which should be saying something also. BJ Callahan is a MLS goalkeeping coach, and he made that team look absolutely amazing last night. And partially it was because we had all our best players playing. And now we're going to question if some of those best players are even going to be in the squad because they have problems with this manager. I'm done. This organization is incompetent, and it needs to be gutted from top to bottom, and just needs to completely restart. That's not going to happen, though, because it's just not. Because this is a profitable organization that, if we get to the round of 16 of the World Cup, that's good for us. Achieve for more. What are we doing, as Taylor Twellman said? That should have been a breaking point for U.S. soccer, which in some parts it was. When they didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2018, that led to the process, which it really wasn't a process, of hiring Greg Berhalter. Only one person was interviewed, and it was him, and he was interviewed by his brother. The process should have completely restarted. As soon as that World Cup ended and we went out the way we did. I 1000% believe a national team manager should not last more than a World Cup cycle unless you make it to finals, semifinals, and in some very rare cases, quarterfinals. And I say rare cases because I'll bring up Gareth Southgate. I'm on the fence about him as an England supporter. He got them in his times with Euros and World Cups. He went to a semifinal, he went to a final, he went to a quarterfinal. That quarterfinal was this most recent World Cup. Probably they would have made it to the final if Harry Kane makes the penalty in the 80th minute, because that would have tied the game against France in the quarterfinals. I believe they go on to win that game. They make the final. They probably don't win it against Argentina, but they most likely make the final. So that would have been a semifinal, a final, and a final. Of course, it was still a quarterfinal. There were, of course, questions. Should we even bring him back? He's not getting it done. Like I said, I was on the fence, but when they announced he's coming back, but he's only coming back through the Euro, and then we'll reconsider again. I like that. You had a 2-year commitment. See if we can win this Euro, which theoretically it should be a real possibility, and then focus on the World Cup from there. That's the most sensible thing to do. What does U.S. Soccer do? Oh, we'll give Berhalter a contract through the 26 World Cup. The most important World Cup of U.S. Soccer's history, hosting it on your own soil, and you're giving it to a guy that doesn't, I don't know if he knows what he's doing half the time. You give it to him, and you know it's an expanded World Cup, so come the knockout stage, you're going to have to win 2 games to get to that quarterfinal. I don't know if he can do that. I don't know what we are doing as a federation, as U.S. Soccer. Give him till Copa America, which now is going to be a complete embarrassment for U.S. Soccer. Mark my words, it will be a complete embarrassment with Greg Berhalter at the helm. He will get exposed against these common bull nations like the Argentinas, like the Brazils, like your Chiles, your Uruguays. He will get exposed. They probably make it out of a group stage. They lose in the semis or whatever, the first round of the knockout stages. I don't know where they start for Copa America, especially this expanded one. And you go from there. I'm so done with this federation and these terrible, terrible decisions. Given that, we'll move on quickly. Like I mentioned, we had some Euro qualifications today. Some results, these are the results from today. Nothing really stands out. England get a 4-0 win on the island of Malta. France get a 3-0 win in Gibraltar. Ukraine comes back from 2-0 down to win in North Macedonia. Greece wins 2-1 against the Republic of Ireland. Turkey beat Latvia. Armenia beats Wales. Wales kind of just fell apart in that game. Finland kind of controlled the game against Slovenia. Denmark 1-0 win against Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland probably could have got a draw there, but they didn't. San Marino lose 3-0 to Kazakhstan. San Marino is still looking for their first win since 2004. Andorra, they lose to Switzerland. No big surprise there. Israel beat Belarus 2-1. And the only draw of the day is Kosovo and Romania. Now, coming tomorrow is the second half of the Euro qualifiers for these groups. So, again, not great matchups here, but like the Norway-Scotland game looks interesting to me. The Belgium-Austria game. Luxembourg-Liechtenstein might be interesting just because those two nations are small and that could put up a good match. And then the Portugal and Bosnia and Herzegovina match. Again, not a ton of great matches there, but given that, we'll wrap up here. I went a lot on U.S. soccer. I just felt like it needed to get out there. Absolutely incompetent organization, and just glad it's over, basically. A coaching search that wasted a lot of money, hiring a search firm and ending up with the same manager you had. New guys, same as the old guy. So that is going to be it for today. We're going to wrap up this week on Sports Talk Live. So hopefully you enjoyed it. You know, we're getting into the summer months where the sports start to die down. So we'll figure out something here. And, you know, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. We'll be back on Monday. I'm sure there will be a lot to talk about. So until then, you know, just keep enjoying sports because there's a lot of it on. And